Don't touch that dial.
She's pretty till she opens her mouth.
Okay, so controversy in kids shows isn't something new, and I bet you can remember some from when you were a kid. Things like Steve from Blue's Clues died, or Tinky Winky is gay, or Barney had drugs in his tail. I heard that one a lot for some reason. And I'm sure I'm missing bigger events that happen in the media regarding kids shows, but we're here to talk specifically about animations and events that some may or may not be aware of. The kind hidden in the back rooms of animation history that were isolated incidents or just forgotten overall. Some are funny, some are strange, and some end in tragedy. From some of our favorite SATM cartoons to some of the more obscure animated films, we're going to look into 6 animations with strange controversies. Blue Puppy is an animated Soviet-era short film by Yuri Entin, which tells the tale of a blue puppy that gets made fun of by the others because he's blue. The blue puppy gets messed with quite a bit until a kind sailor comes to his aid and befriends him. They both work together and resolve the blue puppy's plight, teaching a lesson to both the blue puppy's bullies and the audience that judging people based on appearance is wrong, and to instead judge on their actions. And that remained as the short's meaning for a while, until, around 20 years after the short's initial release, some suspected the meaning of blue and blue puppy to mean something else. In Russia, blue is a common slang term for homosexual, so, looking back at the short, the general public began to suspect the short's actual meaning was about being shunned for being a homosexual. And such lines in the musical segments seem to align with the idea.
Как дела, голубчик?
Голубой, голубой, не хотим играть с тобой. Не бывало до сих пор голубых собак. Ты позоришь целый двор.
Ты бесспорный брак.
Я обижен злой судьбой. Ах, зачем я голубой?
Now, while that was a bit of a downer, please keep in mind, the term blue referencing homosexuals did not exist back in 1976 when this film was released. The term began being used in the 90s, but people pressed on, claiming this theory to be more and more true. So, with pressure mounting on the creator, Yuri Entin, he made a statement saying, "Trust me, I wouldn't have done it in my life if I could have imagined what it would have to do with. It's literally a low blow." Blue Puppy is a loose adaptation of Hungarian writer Julia Urban's tale of the same exact theme, except the puppy is black, not blue. It's believed that the puppy was black to represent discrimination against African Americans in the US, but I can't confirm that, as there wasn't that much I could find on the original. Entin allegedly chose blue for the puppy's color in the Soviet retelling, simply because he wanted the puppy to be a fantastical color, not the traditional colors of a dog. So he picked blue. Hence, almost 60 years later, the short is still referenced with some mockery over the coincidence, but also with nostalgic endearment, despite the short's other meaning to some. Well, this one is quite the load. So, SpongeBob had a couple of incidents. SpongeBob gets fired, and that somehow gives Fox News the idea to go after people who use social services.
Tracy, you say this is exactly what our kids need to hear today?
Yeah, well, look, I'd be the first to tell you I'm not a SpongeBob fan. I don't really
What's wrong with you?
I think he's fresh. I think he's so fresh. But I love that even with his pink slip, aka dress, because that was a really cute little moment. He says, I gotta go get a job. I can't live like this. This is exactly what the kids need to hear. This notion that they're getting it from SpongeBob, who cares where they're getting it from these days? Because everything else they're hearing is so bad and is basically convincing them that they should sit on the couch and collect the government dole.
Well,
Then Fox News strikes again and claims that SpongeBob is, quote, pushing a global warming agenda, with episodes like The Endless Summer and SpongeBob's Last Stand, showing the importance of taking care of the planet. I mean, how dare SpongeBob tell kids not to litter, right? And be mindful of the effect that we have on the environment?
He's talking a lot about global warming, and he's only looking at it from one point of view.
SpongeBob, you're wasting me precious carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide?
Who turned up the heat? SpongeBob, what are you doing?
Just throwing another tire on the fire for global warming, Mr. Krabs.
Okay, so what happened? July 20th, the Department of Education invited a bunch of D.C. kids in, and they had this festivity, and they handed out these particular Nickelodeon books where clearly Nickelodeon is pushing a global warming agenda. And while there is no disputing the fact that the Earth is getting a little warmer, the big question is it man-made, or is it just one of those gigantic climactic phases that we're going? For a while we're cold, and then we get warmer, and then we get colder and warmer. Which one is it? The science on both sides, there are a lot of scientists who say it's this, others say it's that.
Right, it's unproven science, and again, this is public education system that we all pay our tax dollars for, and the SpongeBob book says that it's a man-made problem that requires human intervention.
Right. They're presenting it as fact.
As fact. Meanwhile, the schools there, I mean, we're talking about 14th in the world in reading, 17th in the world in science, 25th in math. So we're forcing an issue that is not yet proven. We can't even teach our kids the adequate math, reading, and science at this point.
Right? You're evil. But most recently, Fox News surprisingly isn't the culprit. Instead, we get a new take on SpongeBob from University of Washington professor Holly M. Barker. In a 2019 article she wrote entitled, Unsettling SpongeBob and the Legacies of Violence on Bikini Bottom. Grammar. Unsettling SpongeBob. Was he hyper-realistic? This professor claims that SpongeBob is a colonizer, claims that SpongeBob's colonization of Bikini Bottom is racist and violent, and that the show as a whole normalizes the, quote, colonial and military violence engendered through his, Stephen Hillenburg's, cartoon depiction of Bikini Bottom, and directly harms the Bikinian people, likening Bikini Bottom to the very real Bikini Atoll, a place where during the Cold War, natives were removed from due to nuclear testing, and were then moved to an island that had little vegetation, which resulted in starvation, and a size that proved to be too small, 1/6 of Bikini Atoll's size to be exact, and was eventually abandoned, resulting in some of the indigenous population's attempts to return back to their homeland, Bikini Atoll, in 1970, only to discover the insanely dangerous levels of radioactivity left there, leaving the island uninhabitable, with a shocking amount of sea life thriving in its crater. Which is where Professor Barker is getting the idea that SpongeBob is a colonizer, and him, quote, settling into Bikini Bottom is directly related to military colonialism in the Marshall Islands. Somehow. Now yes, canonically, the island above Bikini Bottom is called Bikini Atoll, but since when are SpongeBob and his friends colonizers or outsiders that moved in? Besides Sandy, no one else is an outsider. They've always been there. And the theory that Bikini Bottom and its inhabitants are a result of nuclear testing is just that, a theory. Also, Sandy being an animal previously kept on a naval ship, and that the suit she wears is to protect herself from the radiation and somehow not from the water surrounding her that she can't breathe in, is also just a theory. But enough about theories. As far as I'm aware, Stephen Hillenburg never confirmed these theories to be true himself. There's no way of knowing if all the Bikini Bottom residents are supposed to be a result of radiation. And while that theory is very interesting, I don't think a theory is enough to call SpongeBob a racist colonizer, Miss Barker. But actually, mid-October 2019, in response to what was being said about her paper, Ms. Barker stated, quote, My article does not say that the character of SpongeBob is violent or racist. Instead, it asks the readers to consider the way that the show's creation of a fictional world in the non-fictional homelands of the Bikinians removes the US history of violence on that atoll and the Marshallese people from our gaze. Popular culture plays a role in silencing the history and its impact on the Bikinian people. There is absolutely an element of racism involved in the ways that popular and dominant culture removes indigenous peoples from their own lands so that others can use the lands for their own interests. But that is very different from saying the character SpongeBob is racist or violent. Well, that honestly seems more fair. But honestly, most of our paper just reads as a theory in itself. Some of it makes sense, a lot of it doesn't. I guess I'm saying that I'd rather hear the actual Bikinian people's thoughts on it. It would be better than people speculating and using another group's oppression to try and push a narrative without that group's input. At least now, SpongeBob discourse seems to have settled down and... Oh. Welp, never mind.
Starring the mightiest mouse in the universe, Mighty Mouse.
I'm Oil Can Harry, and I'm bad. Mighty Mouse spoils everything. Oh, he makes me mad.
Wow, do you guys remember that? Yeah, definitely went through some changes in the incoming years. However, Mighty Mouse The New Adventures is no stranger to controversy. For instance, in the episode Mighty's Wedlock Whimsy, it's implied that two male characters, Gandy Goose and Sourpuss, are showering together.
Hey, Sourpuss! I hear people outside. Shut up and give me back the soap. Oh, look! It's Pearl, Pureheart, and Mighty Mouse. They seem to be arguing again. You know, I always thought that those two should be together.
And that later, in a dream sequence, Pearl Pureheart ends up having a love child with the cow, Mighty's nemesis. You can tell by the way the cow and the child both moo.
Get up here on the double, Morton! Move!
See you later, Mighty. Gotta go now. I'm coming, Elsie.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Pop. Ha! Moo!
Oh no. But these instances would be overshadowed by a scene in the episode The Littlest Tramp, where Polly Pine Blossom tries to sell a flower, but then some rich bastard comes and crushes it. Later in the episode, Mighty Mouse takes the powdery remnants of the flower and proceeds to sniff the powder into his nose. During the production of the episode, editor Tom Klein went to Ralph Bakshi, the supervising director, about his concerns with the scene, stating it resembled cocaine use. Bakshi agreed to have the scene cut until John Kricfalusi, the show's senior director at the time, thought it was ridiculous to cut the scene as it was harmless. So Bakshi went back to Klein and told him to restore the scene. And with it approved by CBS, the episode aired on October 31st, 1987 without issue. However, 7 months after the initial airing, on June 6th, Donald Wildman, head of the American Family Association, or AFA, claimed that the scene depicted cocaine use, and that CBS had, quote, intentionally hired a known pornographer, referring to Bakshi, to do a cartoon for children and allowed him to insert a scene where a cartoon hero sniffs cocaine. Where they accuse Bakshi of being a pornographer comes from his work on Fritz the Cat, an adult animated film which Bakshi describes as social commentary, not pornography, even when it contains scenes like this. When responding to the backlash, Bakshi stated, "I despise drugs. I would have to be out of my mind to show a cartoon character snorting cocaine in a cartoon." And that Mighty Mouse was simply happy after smelling the flowers because it helped him fondly remember the girl who sold them to him. But, due to the accusations and the fear that kids would actually start to believe that Mighty Mouse is actually doing drugs, CBS ordered Klein to remove the scene from the episode's master footage. After the edits, Wildman used the fact that they removed the scene to mean that they admitted to intentionally referencing snorting cocaine in the episode. The AFA went on to demand Bakshi's removal, but CBS maintained their support of him. Last Year's Snow Was Falling is a Soviet clay animated film made in 1983, which presents a dual plot about a man's quest for a New Year's tree and the odd events during it. The protagonist is presented as dim-witted, with a tongue-tied speech pattern similar to Elmer Fudd. The short's absurdist humor and memorable lines achieved its cult status and Silver Clicker Award in the same year. Despite its praises, the Russian government saw something more sinister underneath. Censors suspected that the film's dialogue contained encoded messages to foreign intelligence due to its absurd delivery. They also claimed that the film's director, Alexander Tarkovsky, is disrespectful to the film's protagonist, who is Russian, by writing him as idiotic. Specific phrases from the film were used against both Tarkovsky and the narrator, Stanislav Salasky, to support the censor's claims. Most notably, these. Hey all of you. Who is last in line to be Tsar here? No one? Then I'll be the first. Despite the efforts from the two, the film was ultimately sent for revisions, aka censorship, and was ultimately recut and redubbed. Before the censored cut was released, voice actor Saldowski was arrested for having forbidden relations in a hotel with a foreign citizen. What those forbidden relations were is a mystery, but as a penalty handed down from the Soviet state, he was removed from the film's credits soon after. Crazy how ultimately, line delivery led up to a guy getting arrested, but sneaking messages in cartoons has been done before. Notably in the 1960s cartoon Batfink. In Batfink, a hidden political message was present in 2 episodes. The message was sped up to sound like filler dialogue. Once while a woman was on the phone,
Most dangerous force in America today is Walter Reuther and his political machine. It's time we realize that they tend to run this country. When the smart publishers put a...
and again when the villain Hugo Agogo's robot bride begins to speak.
What? What did you say?
But what sounded just like normal background filler dialogue was actually this.
Hold on to your hats!
Most dangerous force in America today is Walter Reuther and his political machine. It's time we realize that they intend to run this country. When the smut publishers put a dirty cover on a clean book, let's take it at face value and call it trash and dump it in the river. If right,
Karate asking the real questions. Yeah, the dude's name is Karate. Sigh.
Like any other major metropolis, it has its problems with the criminal element.
Hex yeah, it's Darkwing Duck. Honestly, this is a favorite of mine, but this is something I didn't know about. Apparently, there's an episode from season 3 that's banned, which might explain why I didn't know about it, and why you might not have either. The episode is titled Hot Spells. In this episode, Darkwing and Gosselin accompany Morgana as she visits her old magic school to present a thesis paper. While there, Gosselin is interested in learning magic and gets lured into using forbidden magic by Beelzebub, or basically the devil. This depiction of the devil tricking a child into essentially forbidden actions riled up parents enough to get the episode banned from reruns and still not allowed to air. Apparently, the whole 3rd season has yet to be aired to any streaming service, likely due to the banned episode. With any luck, it'll have an official re-release along with the rest of season 3 at some point. The last entry is by far the most strange and confusing of the rest, and is a little not safe for life. So this will be saved for part 2. And please be assured, you'll understand why.
You may have seen my preview video. This is an extended version. I had my hand in this case for about 2 months. What I found out was that there is approximately a 65% chance that this player is female, and a 53% chance that they are male on Twitter.
Huh.